There is another type in TypeScript called type unknown, and it's a little bit different from type any. They're very close, but you have a little bit more restriction with type unknown. So let me quickly show you an example. So let's say I have a variable. So I'm gonna say customer input, for example, and I have no idea what I'm gonna get as the customer input. It could be a string, it could be an object, it could be an array, it could be anything. So at this point, I'm gonna say, all right, then the type is unknown. So I'm gonna have it like this. And with type unknown, I can come down later and say, well, for the customer input, I'm gonna set it equal to, let's say 10. And you can see that I get no errors. And if I hover over this, you can see now it's still unknown. If I go ahead and print it out, it's gonna be 10 because it's unknown. So I can assign a number to it. And then I can go down, I can say customer input again. This is another input, all right, from the customer. So you can see that I have no errors. And if I come down here and console log all this so you can see it and go ahead and run the code, you can see that I have the latest value, which is the string. And if I comment that out and run it again, you can see now I have 10. So that's working as expected. So now I'm gonna go ahead and define another variable. So let's say let customer age, for example, and I'm gonna say that this is a string just as an example. So let me come up here and let me change this to, let's say age value, right? So the age value, let's say I'm gonna delete this so that I don't confuse you. Well, actually I'm gonna comment it out. So the age value, as you can see here that I'm setting, is a string, right? It's still type unknown. If I hover over this, you can see it right here, but there's a string that is assigned to it at this point here on line 5. So you would think that I should be able to come down here and say customer age, right? And then assign it to the customer input. So if I do customer input, you're gonna see that this is gonna give us an error. And this is a typical typing error because we're assigning two different types. So when you have a situation like this, the way to solve it is to either do a type assertion or you do a control flow based narrowing. And I'm gonna show you an example of each one of those. So here I can say, get this as a string. And you can see now it's not complaining anymore. And this right here, it's called type assertion. So I'm just asserting that, okay, this is unknown, but at this point, I know it's going to be a string. So TypeScript is going to go in the back, do its magic, and then convert this somehow to a string, and then assign it to this if it can. So this is type assertion. So you can see that even with the unknown, you have a little bit of restriction. So if I do this, you see it doesn't work. I put this back. Now you see that it works. And another way you can accomplish the same thing is by using a control flow. So I can go ahead and comment this out and then go down. I can say, and that is just an example, if the type of, so I can do type of and customer input, and I can check to see if it's a string. I can do string here. And I can say, if this is the case, then I can do this assignment. So I'm gonna copy this and then paste it here. And I don't need to put this. And now you can see that it's not complaining anymore. But if I go ahead and remove the statement or the control flow, like I'm doing here, you can see that we're back to the same error, which is you can't assign something of type unknown to something of type string. So let's go ahead and revert this back. So with the unknown type, anything is assignable to it, as I was doing here. So I can come here and just say, hey, this is 10, and I can duplicate this line and then say this is now gonna be an object. So I can do an object with, let's say, an age property, and I can assign, let's say 8, and you can see that it doesn't complain. So you can change these to any here, and you can see that we have no errors. But any is really kind of bad in quotes, because when you use any, the TypeScript compiler just completely gives up on type checking and everything. You have a little bit of restriction, as you can see in the example that I showed you earlier. You can still assign anything to it, but if you try to define a variable and then you give it a type and then try to set this variable to whatever you have in your unknown type, then it's going to require you to do a type assertion, which is what we're doing on line 13. If I uncomment this real quick, you can see that it's not complaining anymore. So we use as and then whatever type you want to parse this to or convert this to, or use an if statement with a control flow here or any other type of control flow that would make sense for the TypeScript compiler, which we're doing here. So we're saying, okay, if the customer input right here, which is the unknown type, if it's a string, then all right, assign it to age because age is an actual string. So TypeScript is smart enough to understand that we're doing this checking, and then it stops complaining about assigning the unknown to the string, because we're checking to make sure that it's an actual string before we do the assignment. Or we can do a type assertion, as you can see here on line 13.